I never thought I'd return to that godforsaken McMansion in Greenwich, Connecticut, the one my father built with blood money and lies. But revenge has a way of rewriting your itinerary. They gathered like vultures at a wake, my cousins, aunts, uncles, all sipping Chardonnay from crystal glasses, toasting to the family legacy while carving me up with their whispers. Poor Annabelle, Aunt Lydia sneered, her Botox smile cracking just enough to show the venom beneath, still scraping by in that rat-hole apartment in Brooklyn, while the rest of us thrive. Some people just can't keep up with the Hendersons. The laughter rippled like a bad hangover, sharp and unrelenting, as Uncle Roy leaned back in his Adirondack chair, cigar smoke curling toward the stars. Hell, Annie, you could have been one of us if you'd just played the game right. But nah, you had to go all bleeding heart liberal on us, testifying against your own blood. My cousin Jake, the golden boy with his Yale degree and hedge fund swagger, chimed in, "Face it, sis sir. Cousin, you're the black sheep. Maybe it's time to cut the cord. We don't need your sob stories dragging down the vibe." I stood there on the edge of the flagstone patio, the summer air thick with jasmine and hypocrisy, my thrift store sundress clinging like a second skin of shame. They couldn't know, that the feds had finally cracked the case, that the statute of limitations on their sins had run out like sand through an hourglass. But I did. And as the rotors thumped in the distance, growing louder than their jeers, I smiled for the first time that night. "You think poverty's my curse?" I said, voice steady as a loaded Glock. "Gentlemen and ladies, hold onto your caviar. The tide's about to turn." The chopper sliced through the night sky like a scalpel through silk, its downdraft whipping napkins into a frantic ballet across the lawn. I didn't flinch as it settled beside the driveway, blades slowing to a predatory whine, the pilot's door popping open before the dust even cleared. My family's faces, those smug, sun-kissed masks of entitlement, contorted into a collective gasp, eyes darting from me to the beast of a machine, then back again. Who the hell lands a Bell 407 in a residential cul-de-sac without a by-your-leave from the HOA? Me. That's who. Courtesy of a very grateful U.S. Attorney's office and a settlement that made my poverty a punchline from another life. Aunt Lydia's flute slipped from her manicured fingers, shattering on the pavers like her illusions. "Annabelle, what in God's name?" But I was already moving, striding toward the bird with the calm of a woman who'd stared down RICO charges and walked away clean. Jake bolted upright, spilling his scotch. "Is that yours?" "No way." "You? A helicopter?" Uncle Roy puffed his cigar harder, feigning nonchalance. But I saw the twitch in his jowl, the flicker of fear in eyes that had once stared down grand juries without blinking. I paused at the chopper's step, turning back to them under the floodlights that bathed the scene in stark, unforgiving white. "Not just mine," I called over the dying echo of the engine. "It's ours. All of ours." See? While you were busy mocking the prodigal daughter, I was busy exhuming the family skeleton you buried in my lap 15 years ago. The silence stretched, taut as a tripwire. Then, the pilot, ex-Marine, built like a brick shithouse, tossed me a leather satchel, heavy with the weight of manila folders and USB drives. I caught it one-handed, letting it dangle like a noose. "Remember that little accounting error at Daddy's firm? The one that sent me to federal prison for fraud while you all scattered like roaches under a light?" My voice carried, amplified by the adrenaline surging through my veins like moonshine. "I took the fall for you, Roy. For all of you. But the truth? It has a funny way of resurfacing, especially when the SEC gets a tip from a ghost. Uncle Roy's cigar dropped into his lap, sizzling against his khakis. He patted it out frantically, but the burn was already done. That night marked the end of my exile and the dawn of their reckoning. But to understand the venom in that smile, you have to rewind to the beginning, or what passed for one in the Henderson dynasty. I was 22, fresh out of Sarah Lawrence with a degree in ethics that felt as useful as a screen door on a submarine. My father, Harlan Henderson, was the king of Wall Street wolves, the guy who turned penny stocks into empires overnight and hosted 4th of July bashes that made the pages of Town and Country. We weren't just rich, we were the kind of rich that bought silence, loyalty, and alibis. It started with a whisper in the boardroom. Daddy's firm, Henderson Capital, was cooking the books, shell companies in the Caymans, inflated assets, the whole Enron playbook minus the cameras. I stumbled into it accidentally, auditing a side project for extra credit. One late night in the glass tower on Park Avenue, fueled by Red Bull and righteous indignation, I found the ledgers. Not just fudged numbers, evidence of insider trading that could have tanked markets, ruined pensions, left grandmas eating cat food. I confronted him the next morning, tears in my eyes, begging him to come clean. We fix this, Dad. Together. His laugh was a gut punch. Fix it, Annabelle. This is the game. You win big, or you lose everything. But I couldn't let it go. I leaked an anonymous tip to the Journal, thinking it'd force his hand. Instead, it ignited the inferno. The feds swarmed, subpoenas flying like confetti at a funeral. Daddy called an emergency family huddle in the penthouse, the air thick with Cuban cigars and desperation. That's when Uncle Roy, Daddy's right-hand man, the silver-tongued fixer, stepped in with his silver bullet. "We need a fall guy," he said, eyes sliding over me like I was yesterday's news. Someone young, idealistic. Someone who'll look good pleading ignorance. Aunt Lydia, ever the socialite with a spine of steel wool, nodded vigorously. Annabelle's perfect. She's got that activist streak, juries eat it up. Plus, Harlan. She'll keep her mouth shut for the family. Jake. Then just a cocky intern, smirked from the corner. Do it for Dad. Annie. Loyalty above all. I remember the betrayal like a fresh scar. Hot. Itching. Impossible to ignore. They framed me with forged emails, backdated transfers, a paper trail that painted me as the mastermind. Daddy's lawyers twisted the knife, coaching me through a plea deal, 5 years in Danbury, no trial, and a vow of silence on the family matter. I signed because they dangled the carrot, probation for Daddy if I played ball, a trust fund resurrection for the cousins' Ivy educations. It's temporary, Daddy whispered in the holding cell, his Brioni suit rumpled for the first time. You'll be a hero when it's over. Hero? I rotted in that concrete womb, counting rosaries of regret while they picnicked in the Hamptons. Letters from home dried up after month 3, visits after 6. Jake sent a postcard once. Miss you? Cuz. Stay strong. Blessed. By release. I was a ghost, disbarred dreams. Credit trashed. The Henderson name a curse that followed me like bad juju. I clawed my way to Brooklyn, waitressing at a dive bar called the Rusty Nail, slinging IPAs to hipsters who thought white-collar crime was a TED Talk. Poverty wasn't just financial, it was erasure. But secrets fester like untreated wounds. In prison, I met Rosie, a lifer for embezzlement. Sharp as a shiv and twice as loyal. She taught me the black art of digging, public records requests, FOIA filings, the slow burn of persistence. They think you're done, chica, she'd say over contraband cigarettes. But the system's got holes bigger than their egos. I started small, tracking daddy's offshore slush funds, cross-referencing with SEC leaks. Turns out, while I cooled my heels, Uncle Roy had pivoted the firm into crypto scams, preying on retirees with Ponzi promises. And Aunt Lydia? She wasn't just the trophy wife. She was the ghostwriter for the fake audits. Her sorority smarts turned to felony forgery. The real bombshell dropped 2 years post-release. In a dingy internet cafe off Flatbush. A whistleblower forum pinged an anonymous post from Deep Throat 87 with scandocs proving Jake hadn't just watched, he'd engineered the frame job. Hacking my email to plant the bait. My own cousin, the one I'd babysat through chicken pox, sold me out for a junior partnership. Rage bloomed then, not hot and fleeting, but cold, meticulous, the kind that forges diamonds from coal. I didn't go to the cops, not yet. Revenge isn't about justice, it's about equilibrium. I lawyered up pro bono with an ACLU shark named Marcus, who saw my story as the poster child for white-collar inequities. We built the case brick by brick, depositions from ex-employees too scared to talk before, blockchain traces on the crypto laundering. The feds bit when we dangled Roy's Cayman accounts, millions siphoned while I starved on ramen. That's how the chopper came into play. The settlement was hush-hush, $12 million for emotional distress, immunity for my testimony, and a non-prosecution agreement if the family coughed up the real culprits. The bird? A perk from a grateful prosecutor. Leased for transport during proceedings. Symbolic. Sure. But symbols cut deep in a family built on facades. Back at the Greenwich soiree, as the rotors stilled, I unzipped the satchel and let the folders spill onto the grass like fallen leaves of autumn judgment. Exhibit A, I said, holding up Jake's forged email chain. Your promotion paperwork.
Cousin.
Signed in Daddy's blood, metaphorically. Of course. He lunged for it, face purple as a storm cloud. But Marcus, my shadow that night, all pinstripes and predator grin, stepped between us. Easy, Mr. Henderson. Tampering's a felony, Aunt Lydia wailed, collapsing into a wicker chaise like a diva in a bad opera. This is madness. Annabelle, you're destroying us. For what? A grudge? Uncle Roy tried the charm offensive, ambling forward with palms up. Kiddo, let's talk. Family first, right? We can make this go away. But his eyes, those weasel eyes, darted to the chopper, calculating escape vectors. I laughed, the sound brittle as autumn leaves. Family? You murdered mine the day you pinned your sins on me. Daddy died in that plane crash 6 months after my release. Heart attack. They said. But I know better. Guilt's a slow poison.
Roy. And now?
It's your turn to choke. The night unraveled from there. A tableau of accusations and alibis under the Connecticut stars. Jake bolted for his Tesla. But the driveway was blocked by unmarked SUVs, feds. Right on cue. Aunt Lydia dialed her divorce attorney mid-sob, while Roy lit another cigar, muttering about appeals and senators he owned.
Me?
I boarded the chopper, the satchel at my feet, and watched the McMansion shrink to a toy in the floodlights. Vengeance tasted like aged bourbon, smooth, with a bite that lingered. But closure? That's a myth for Hallmark cards. as the bird lifted off, rotors thumping a dirge. I spotted Daddy's ghost in the rearview, proud, ashamed, eternally conflicted. The Hendersons would scatter, fortunes frozen, reputations in tatters. Yet in the quiet hum of assent, doubt crept in. Had I become them? Ruthless, unyielding, trading mercy for the thrill of the fall? The city lights sprawled below like a neural net of neon sins. And, for the first time, I wondered if the cage I'd escaped was just traded for one with a better view. The fallout hit like a nor'easter off Long Island Sound, swift, unrelenting, stripping the facade from that gilded cage we'd called home. By dawn, the headline screamed from my phone's lock screen: Henderson Scion's daughter exposes decades of fraud, family empire crumbles. The journal led with a grainy photo of Jake in cuffs outside the Greenwich PD, his Yale mug twisted into something feral. Aunt Lydia's society columns went dark overnight, her philanthropy galas rebranded as potential money laundering fronts. Uncle Roy, holed up in his Fifth Avenue lair, lawyered to the gills. But even his Rolodex of politicians couldn't outrun the blockchain receipts I'd FedExed to the Manhattan DA. I holed up in a Tribeca loft, another settlement perk, all exposed brick and skyline views that mocked my Brooklyn ghosts. Marcus swung by with takeout from Joe's Pizza, grease-stained boxes steaming on the reclaimed wood table. "You did it, Annabelle," he said, folding a slice like a pro. "RICO indictments incoming." Roy's singing already, naming names, flipping on the board. I nodded, chewing mechanically, but the victory felt hollow, like biting into a wax apple. "And, Daddy?" I asked, voice small. Marcus paused, sauce dripping onto his cuff. "Clean. Mostly." He greenlit the frame. But the heavy lifting? That was Roy's rodeo. Nights blurred into a haze of depositions and nightmares. I'd wake sweating, the echo of cell block catcalls mingling with the whir of chopper blades. Rosie wrote from Danbury, "Collect calls on the house now, thanks to her parole push." "Proud of you, Mija," her gravel voice crackled over the line. "But watch your back. Snakes don't die, they shed." She was right. Whispers slithered through the grapevine. Jake, out on bail, ranting in Hampton's bars about my betrayal. Lydia, playing the victim card to Vanity Fair, spinning yarns of a troubled niece's vendetta. The real twist coiled in the shadows. Though, Daddy's hidden ledger, the one Roy swore didn't exist. I'd found it buried in a Cayman vault, accessed via a thumb drive from Rosie's old con network. Not just numbers, letters. Daddy's confessions, penned in his looping scrawl, detailing how he'd shielded me from the worst, the mob ties, the union shakedowns that funded the early trades. "Annabelle's too pure for this dirt," one read. "Better she hates me than drowns in it." Pure? I'd laughed till I cried, ink blurring under tears. He'd taken bullets, metaphorical, at least, for Roy's excesses, then let me shoulder the avalanche. It gnawed at me during the preliminary hearing in Foley Square, the federal courthouse a marble tomb of echoing footsteps. I testified in a pantsuit that cost more than a month's rent back in the day, voice steady as I unpacked the frame job layer by layer. Jake glared from the defense table, his bond money buying a custom Tom Ford glare. "Liar," he hissed during cross. But the judge's gavel cracked like thunder. Roy took the stand next, a husk of his silver fox self, trading testimony for leniency. It was Annabelle's idea, he lied at first, eyes locking on mine with that old manipulator's gleam. But Marcus had the emails, irrefutable, time-stamped. Roy folded like a cheap suit, spilling on Jake's hacks, Lydia's forgeries, even a side hustle peddling fentanyl-laced opioids through shell clinics. The gallery buzzed, reporters, rubberneckers, a smattering of Henderson holdouts clutching pearls like life rafts. One auntie, Cousin Millie's mom, cornered me in the hall post-recess. "How could you? Dear, we're blood."
Blood.
The words soured in my mouth like curdled cream. "Blood washes off," I replied, brushing past. But her eyes, pleading, fractured, stuck like burrs. That's when the doubt metastasized. Late nights, I'd pace the loft, city hum a lullaby of horns and sirens. Was I avenging a wrong, or just mirroring their cruelty? Daddy's letters painted him not as monster, but martyr, sacrificing his pure girl to save the empire from collapse. Roy's flips weren't just cowardice, they were survival. The same instinct that landed me in Danbury. And Jake, under the smirk, a scared kid chasing Daddy's ghost, just like me. The climax brewed over bourbon at the Dead Rabbit, an Irish dive in the financial district where Wall Street wolves nursed regrets. Marcus dragged me there to celebrate Roy's guilty plea, 10 years. Minimum. But as the fiddles wailed and peat smoke curled, a shadow slid onto the stool beside me.
Jake.
Unshaven. Tie askew. Smelling of desperation and doers. "Truce," he said, sliding a Macallan my way. I stared, the glass cold against my palm. "You framed me." "For a corner office." He shrugged, hollow as a drum. "And you buried us." Dad's rolling in his grave. Annie. Harlan. The name hit like a sucker punch. "He wrote me letters," I said, voice cracking, explaining it all. He knew. Jake's laugh was bitter tonic. "Knew?"
He orchestrated it.
"To protect you from the real dirt. Roy's mob pals? They'd have clipped you for snooping." Clipped. The word hung, heavy as lead. Daddy hadn't just let me fall. He'd pushed a paternal parachute into hell. We talked till last call, words tumbling like loose change, apologies half-formed, justifications jagged. Jake confessed the hack was Roy's order, but he'd pulled the trigger for loyalty points. I admitted the chopper landing, theatrics, pure spite. "I wanted you to feel small," I whispered. He nodded, eyes wet. "We all do." Dawn crept in, gray and unforgiving, as we stumbled out onto Water Street. "What now?" he asked, the city waking around us like a beast. I didn't answer. Instead, I handed him the thumb drive, Daddy's letters, unredacted. "Read them. Then decide." He pocketed it, vanishing into the subway maw. Betrayal's echo, but laced with mercy, the line blurred, controversial as a jury hung. Weeks later, the trial crescendoed in a blaze of cross-exams and character assassinations. Lydia took the stand, a tear-streaked spectacle in Chanel, swearing I'd seduced the auditors for dirt. The press ate it up, Henderson drama trended, splitting Twitter into camps, justice for Annabelle versus family over everything. Protesters clogged the plaza, signs waving like semaphore, "Wall Street eats its young," countered by "Snitches get stitches." I watched from the witness box, numb, as Roy's testimony flipped again, implicating Jake deeper, then backpedaling under his lawyer's glare. Mistrust rippled, infecting the jury pool. One holdout, a retired cop, eyed me like yesterday's suspect. The raid on the McMansion aired live on CNN, SWAT stacking up like dominoes. breaching the solarium where Daddy's portrait loomed. They hauled out servers, ledgers, a safe crackling with bearer bonds. I coordinated from the loft. Marcus on speaker. Clean sweep. Annie. You're vindicated. But vindication? It tasted of ash. That night, Jake texted. Letters.
He's a monster.
But ours. Dropping the appeal. Take the plea. His confession sealed the case. No trial. Just sentencing. Mercy. Or manipulation. The debate forums exploded. Was I the hero restoring balance? Or the villain dismantling a dynasty for personal catharsis? As the gavel fell, Jake 5 years. Lydia 3 with community service. Roy 15. I slipped out the side door. The autumn chill nipping at my coat. The chopper waited on a heliport in Queens. Rotors idle. A siren song of escape. But I waved it off, opting for the A train instead. Grimy. Grounding. Real. Brooklyn welcomed me back. The Rusty Nails neon buzz a bomb. Rosie got paroled that week. We toasted with IPAs. Her laugh a lifeline. You didn't become them, she said. You outgrew M. Yet the twist lingered. A barb in the happy-ish ending. Months on. A package arrived. No return address. Jake's scrawl on the card. For the Empire's heir. Inside, Daddy's signet ring. Engraved with our initials intertwined. And a note. He left it for you. Forgive?
Nah. But understand?
Always. I slipped it on. The weight familiar. Fraught. Hero? Villain? Or just the survivor in a game rigged from the cradle? The Hendersons faded, scattered to Palm Beach condos and anonymous trusts, but their shadows stretched long. I started a non-profit, auditing firms for the little guys, turning poison into purpose. Controversial? Hell yes. Critics called it payback theater. But in the quiet hours, staring at the East River's oily gleam, I knew the truth. Revenge doesn't heal, it recalibrates. And in America's grand, gritty arena, that's as close to justice as we get. Epilogues are for suckers who crave tidy bows. But life and the Hendersons never wrapped neat. 6 months post-sentencing, I found myself back in Greenwich. Not for triumph, but a funeral. Cousin Millie, the quiet one who'd stayed neutral through the storm, OD'd on the very fentanyl Roy's clinics had peddled. Her service was a subdued affair in the Episcopalian chapel off Route 1, rain lashing the stained glass like accusatory fingers. The family straggled in thinned ranks, hollow-cheeked, averting eyes from the mahogany box and, inevitably,
Me.
I sat in the back pew, anonymous in a black sheath from Target, the signet ring heavy under my glove. Aunt Lydia spotted me first, her face a rictus of grief and grudge. But she said nothing, just clutched her hymnal tighter. Jake arrived late, probation anklet glinting under his slacks, sliding into the row ahead without a glance.
Roy?
Serving time upstate, sending regrets via courier, a check for Millie's kids. And signed. The eulogy was a masterpiece of evasion, Father Michael's droning on lost innocence without naming the vipers in the garden. But as the casket lowered into the sodden earth, Jake turned, rain mingling with something wetter on his cheeks. You came, he murmured, voice raw. I nodded, throat tight. For her. Not you. He handed me a damp envelope, Daddy's last will, the codicil I'd never seen. Read it. Then burn it. Or don't. Alone in the motel that night, seedy, off the Merritt Parkway, with a neon vacancy sign flickering judgment, I cracked the seal. Harlan's words, dated the week before his crash. To Annabelle, my anchor and my albatross, if you're reading this, the Empire's dust. I built it on sand, Roy's schemes, Lydia's lies, Jake's ambition, to shield you from the wolves I invited. The frame? My call. You were the only pure thing, better tarnished than torn. Forgive the old man?
Nah.
But know this, the ring's yours. Wear it as armor, not chains. And if revenge calls, answer, but leave room for grace.
Love.
Dad.
Grace.
The word mocked me as thunder rolled, lightning etching the cheap curtains in stark relief. I toppled thrones, but at what cost? Millie's death, the collateral in our blood feud, split the remnants further. Online, the debates raged. Annabelle's reckoning saved lives versus she shattered a family, breeding despair. Pundits on Fox called me a feminist avenger, MSNBC, a class warrior. But in the mirror, I saw only fractures, a woman who'd traded chains for choices, yet carried the weight all the same. The drive back to the city was a blur of wipers and white lines. The envelope ashes scattered from the window like confetti at a wake. I didn't burn it whole, just the codicil, keeping the ring as talisman. Brooklyn greeted with its chaos, street vendors hawking halal carts, graffiti murals preaching resistance. At the Rusty Nail, Rosie manned the bar, pouring a victory pint. Healed, she asked, eyebrow arched. I clinked glasses.
Healing.
Close enough. The nonprofit thrived, Henderson's Against Fraud, ironic acronym HAF, auditing the auditors. Donors trickled in, ex-cons, jilted investors, even a contrite Henderson cousin mailing checks anonymously. Jake resurfaced sporadically, emails from a halfway house, probing truces. Millie'd want us patched, one read. I replied once. She'd want truth. Start there. No response. Roy wrote too. Prison stationery crisp, appeals for visits, veiled pleas for leniency. I forwarded them to Marcus, let the system chew. The true twist? It wasn't in the will or the raid. It unfolded in the quiet recalibration. A year on, I met Theo at a gala, tech bro turned whistleblower, all earnest eyes and ethical hacks. We bonded over bad wine and worse boardroom tales, his startup folding under similar pressures. You're the reason I fought back, he said on our third date, skyline twinkling from his rooftop. Love, too soon. But possibility? A spark in the dark. Yet doubts dogged, U-shaped and unrelenting. Late nights, the ring glinted accusatory. Had I avenged? Or avenged too far? Daddy's grace, his final flip from tyrant to tutor, forced the mirror. No one's all villain. We're mosaics of motive and mistake. The chopper gathered dust in a hangar, leased out for eco-tours, irony's full circle. I flew commercial now. Economy class. The jostle a reminder of roots. The ending?
Pick your poison.
Happy. I build anew. Theo's hand in mine. HAF toppling titans while I sleep sound. Tragic. The shadows lengthen. Jake's silence a suicide note waiting. My victory, a Pyrrhic pile of rubble. Controversial? Absolutely. Readers, jurors, can divided on the scales. Was the fall worth the flight? In America's theater of ambition, where fortunes flip like pancakes and betrayals breakfast daily, the debates the denouement.
Me?
I choose the dawn flawed, fierce, flying solo. But the ring whispers grace.
Annabelle.
always room for grace. And as the city pulses eternal, engines and egos in symphony, I step into it unbowed, unbroken, the black sheep turned wolf in wool.